When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Meta Show. Today is Saturday, February the 11th, 2023. I am joined by three of the finest gentlemen you will ever meet in EVE Online. My favorite co-hostess with the mostest from Wormhole Space, by the way, Mark Resurrectus, and my boy Kazanir, an angry mustache from Goons, also all CSM members. Hi, fellas. It's amazing that we're all back in the same place again for another Saturday.
I know. How interesting. It's been an interesting few weeks, hasn't it? Been a minute since I've seen you guys, but as I understand, you had a show in Iceland last week, right?
We were very intimate with each other in that show. You might even say we were on top of each other.
There was lots of touching and hugging on that show, which I think was kind of scared everyone in a variety of ways. Even Angry was partying it up with us in Iceland. I was impressed.
I'm making it down, dude. It's not a joke.
It's good. Yeah, I'm sad. So for those who didn't know, I couldn't physically make it to the summit, but I was awake in the middle of the night attending for every moment of those meetings for all of the days. It was quite exciting. So don't count me out just yet.
Yeah, he was up from like 3 a.m. to 2 a.m. to like
it was nuts.
Were you working those days too?
No. I took the week off. What happened was I took the week off, but things actually were so busy that there were several work calls during the week I couldn't evade, and I just had to shift them to later after the summit had concluded. Because then it was now 9 or 10 in the morning Pacific time, totally normal. The workday is still happening, right? So it was interesting, but it was great fun, right? They did their best to impress us. We'll get into it later in the show.
Correct. First of all, one thing. Happy birthday, Yusetsu. He says his birthday was in the chat. Nice. Mark, I love those glasses. Don't let anybody bully you about those glasses. Those are Pit Vipers. Those are an automatic "You are awesome" button that you can smash very quickly and look pretty cool. I have a pair of those. They are Rampage Incorporated specials.
They are Brisc. These are, of course, the official sunglasses of Rampage Incorporated. If you look up here on my shelf, you'll see a case of Big Wave, the official beer of Rampage Incorporated. I keep these things around to build an aesthetic, and I will not be bullied. I think these are great sunglasses. Fuck you, Mr. Secretary.
Damn right.
These look fresh as hell.
You got to say. We don't say fuck you on this show, okay, Mark? We say eat my ass on this show.
Eat my ass.
Standards.
There is plenty of it to go around, so you can have a
rules. All right, so gentlemen, let's get started. I have a couple of things. I'm going to hop up on my soapbox here for a moment because
I'm ready.
I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I think that makes this game unique, and then I'm going to ask you guys for money. So. One of the things that I think anybody that looks at this game looks at, they're always concerned. They always say things like, oh, this game is so toxic. Oh, Mark just told somebody to fuck himself. Oh, Brisc said eat my ass. Oh, these guys are yelling at each other. They're accusing each other of all these nasty things. Look at all this bad stuff that's happening. The community is so toxic. And then there's Plex4Good. And I want to highlight that this week, CCP announced the newest Plex4Good campaign. Let me pull it up on the screen here. It is Plex4Good for Turkey and Syria. As you all know, dreadful earthquakes hit Turkey and Syria earlier this week. 300,000 people have been displaced. More than 21,000 people have died. And the one thing that happens, at least in this community in EVE Online, is every time there's a natural disaster, we step up. We get up, we go, and we donate money. And we try to help our fellow neighbors and players who play in those areas and play in that region and have been impacted. I had a couple long conversations. You're not going to believe this. I had a couple of long conversations with my old nemesis, Omega Gold, who lives in Istanbul, who was giving me advice on how to talk to CCP and how to make sure they give the right get the right partners for the program, and asking if we were going to do Plex4Good and all this other kind of stuff. And I was talking to him and assuring him and telling him to talk to CCP Swift and everything, and we worked it out. In times of trial, it doesn't matter how much you dislike somebody in EVE Online, we all will get together to help. And most recently, last year, 2022, we raised over $500,000 to help the folks that were displaced and hurt in Ukraine during the war in Ukraine, which is still ongoing. And we have done earthquakes, typhoons, hurricanes, tsunamis, monsoons, you name it, brush fires. We've done Plex4Good for all of these, and we are doing Plex4Good for Turkey. So Plex4Good is open right now. It will run until midnight on February 22nd, 23:59 UTC on 21st of February. That is in 2 weeks. I've already donated. I hope that all of you who care about this, that you will donate as well. We have a lot of friends out there that are getting hurt, and we should try to help them.
It's kind of wild, really, that you can take your essentially your in-game wealth and make some sort of real-world impact. These are kind of rare opportunities. It's not normally supposed to work that way. We don't allow RMT, right? So this is actually kind of cool if you think about it that way, that CCP is able to do that on the back of the Plex system and make a real impact. It's tight. And I did not realize it was over $500,000 for the war in Ukraine that had gotten so dramatically high. Wow.
Yeah.
Really awesome.
The videos and pictures that have come out of Turkey or in Syria over the last couple of days have been pretty dramatic, and we all have a pretty good time here. I think we're definitely going to be cutting up here before too long. But speaking as seriously as we can, there are a lot of folks right now who are in a pretty bad spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, you don't realize how many people right? I happen to have dated a girl whose family was from Iskenderun, which is the impacted region back in the day, right? And then people don't know this is the movie that's in Indiana Jones, and I think I want to say it's
on the Pilgrim Trail from Eastern Empire.
The city Alexandretta, right, where it connects. This is where the Grail, I think, allegedly was. So this is well known place in certain ways that is having this happen.
So anyway, if you want to give to Plex4Good, here's how you do it. In game, there is a character called CCP Plex4Good. It is a character that is in the CCP Alliance. You pull the Plex out of your Plex vault, you put it in your item hanger, and you contract it to CCP Plex4Good. They will accept the contract. It took about 5 minutes for them to accept the contract that I put in earlier, 2 or 3 days ago. And the money goes there. They will take all of the money that goes in, they cash it in, they take the check, and they write a big check, and they are doing this towards, I believe, Doctors Without Borders and ASAB, I believe, is who they are donating to this time. Let me see if it says here to remember. Yeah, Doctors Without Borders and ABAP. That's it. ABAP. I thought I had it wrong, which is a Turkish local nonprofit GCO. I believe that's the one that Omeka told me they should be going to. I know there was some concerns about the Turkish government. We share those, but this is not a political show, so we're not going to talk politics. We'll say we're doing our best. I think CCP is doing their best to make sure that the money gets to places where it will actually get to people. So I urge everybody to get out there and donate. That will be, I think, another example of the best part of the EVE community. Say what you will about us being toxic. You know what? When something like this happens, we step up and we do good. I also want to highlight, before we get started again, that there are a couple of player events that are happening right now and are coming up. The first is all my friends in EVE London. I'd like to say hi. I got a picture here. They're my boys from Init, partying it up at EVE London. It's happening right now, today in London. I hope everybody's there. My boy McLeod. Here's my boy McLeod right here. Right here. Hart McLeod. He's right there. Everybody's out there having a good time. If you have not gone to an EVE meet, I strongly urge that you do. They are fun. They are interesting. You get to talk EVE with a bunch of nerds that you would normally not see. And no other place can you meet a group of people that all are talking about the same video game. You're lucky to meet another EVE player in the wild. Yeah. It happens so rarely. Like when it happens, I remember it. It's such a big deal.
I had a really cool opportunity while we were in Iceland to talk to CCP Convict about that, because when he first got into EVE, we were talking about how I was lucky because I grew up, I had a group of friends from my own hometown who all played at the same time. He said he met the first person he ever knew other than himself who had played EVE at an EVE meetup in Australia. So they're cool. It's cool to meet, even just being around other people who still play the game. Yeah, it's fucking cool. Go do it.
Yeah. Speaking of random people, though, although my dad comes to Iceland, the security person at the Reykjavik at the Keflavik airport used to work for CCP and saw my EVE cert while I was going through the security. He's like, "Hey, watch out for the gate camp on the way out."
Nice.
Were you in the country? Awesome. Were you angry? Were you in the cab where like the cab driver had some strong opinions about CCP at one point?
I was in the cab.
I do not know. I was not in that one.
So this is funny. We're sitting in the cab and we left CCP headquarters to go back to the hotel. And the cab driver, like, if you've never been to Iceland, you have to realize they have like 10 companies that are really big on the island, and CCP is one of the big companies. Yeah. So they're in the news all the time. And the cab driver, "Oh, you're working with CCP. I hate those guys." He's like, they're constantly begging the government for funding instead of like being a good company. And it was all corporate welfare. And I was like, damn, we catch the one libertarian fucking cab driver in the whole island.
Were you like, tell me everything? Like, we hate them too. Like, we fight with them constantly.
Yeah, we're like, tell us everything. What do you really not like? I want to know.
Group, right?
we were trying to figure out why he was so upset, and like we found out two things. One, he's the Iceland's only libertarian, so he was very upset about the fact that they
all the European countries give their big corporations money. Yeah, we do that too. We just call it tax cuts. But please continue.
So the other thing that he was very upset about was that at some point in the past, CCP was, and I did not know this, and this I don't know if this is actually true, but I know this is what he said. They had been approached by HBO to produce an.
This is true.
Is it true?
Yeah.
Okay. This is very cool. Approached by HBO to produce an EVE show, and in his words, had gotten caught up in the percentages, and he was very upset about that because in his mind, that would have really put Iceland on the map to have an HBO show,
an HBO EVE Online TV show.
Oh my gosh, he was turned up about it, dude.
He was that guy.
I totally forgot about that part. You're right.
Yeah. He sounds absolutely accurate. What man, the milieu is just crazy. But
I know.
Hey, but since Last of Us 2 is doing Last of Us doing, maybe HBO will look at other popular video game franchises.
Right? Why not? I would think that it might be one of those things where, hey, if one of them works really well, they can start doing more. That would be rich. Maybe they'll go back to EVE.
As an IP, EVE could be mined in that way in just an incredible fashion, right? You're not tied to very many rules in science fiction terms. It's not hard sci-fi, right? It is more like a space opera in terms of how the universe works, right? So there's just an enormous field of media that they could be creating there. I'd love to see that.
Exactly. I think it would be great.
Is the new Last of Us show any good? I haven't watched it yet.
Everybody tells me that it's amazing, but it will tear your heart out. Okay. So I am not going to watch it because I don't need any more downer shit in my life. I play EVE.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's enough for me. I don't need anything else.
Yeah, ignore all the very gamer complaints about Last of Us. It's a very good show.
Cool. I'm going to check it out.
Okay. Aranda says it's not downer shit, but I hear it's really like it pulls at the heart, tugs at the heartstrings. Yes. Thank you. It rips your heart out in a good way. There's the way to rip your heart out in a good way. I'm just saying. That's like saying Marley and Me. That was a great movie. It was so stirring. No, it was awful. You can't do that to people. I'm just saying. Anyway, getting back to what we were talking about. Next up, the next EVE event. There are other EVE events during the year. Somebody had asked in the chat, and I'm sorry that I missed the name. How do we find out about these EVE events? A lot of it is word of mouth, which is one of the reasons why people ask me when these things go around, hey, Brisc, can you mention this on the show? And I'm happy to do it when I remember. And I forgot last week, but I told the guys I would do it this week. So I want to remind everybody what's coming up. This is one that's coming up. Eve Montreal is March the 25th in, amazingly enough, Montreal.
Whoa.
So this will be Eve North this year. 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern time. They are meeting in Montreal in Canada. Get your tickets. I will put the link to the Eventbrite in the chat so you can see it. There it is. This will be, I think, a pretty good time. And I know all the guys in Eve North. I know a lot of the folks. I was supposed to go to Eve Toronto until I had a massive toothache problem, which I think Arcia and others will note is not the best time to be traveling when you have teeth problems, just saying. So I missed it. And then, of course, the last couple were all canceled because of COVID. So we're trying to get back in the swing of things. They did it last year. We got this. We will get, Vegas is coming up. Eve New Orleans is the next one. That is in May, I believe, May or June. Eve Vegas is in April. I'm waiting on some stuff from Eve Vegas. We'll talk about that when we get it. But yes, we do have a number of evenings coming up. And then, of course, the big one, the granddaddy of them all, FanFest. September, the end of September of this year is FanFest. This is going to be, I think, a crazy, big, massive FanFest.
Yeah.
It's the 20th anniversary of EVE Online. The game was launched in May of 2003. This is the 20th anniversary. We're starting the third decade of this game. I can't believe it. This game is old enough to drink in most European countries. It's old enough to vote in the United States. It's old enough to drive in the United States. It's old enough to get drafted in the United States. It's almost old enough to drink. We got another year. But it's crazy to think about all the stuff that has happened in this game over those 20 years. And I'm hoping, we had a lot of conversations at CSM Summit about what they want to do. We told them, whatever you do, it needs to be big. And we want a lot of gear and tchotchkes because that's what we like.
We want that good, that schmutz. We want that.
Give me that damn swag, baby. I want my swag. And we want to have stuff to remember. So I know that this is a big deal. The company is paying a lot of attention to it, and I think they're going to try to make it a good time. So keep that on your radar. But again, coming up, today is Eve London. Then we have Eve Montreal. We have Eve Vegas. We have Eve New Orleans. There are also all kinds of local events around the world otherwise that happen all the time. We've done DC meets. We did a DC meet in January in Washington here. There are different places. I know California, Los Angeles does one usually once a month. And then the big granddaddy of them all, FanFest, will be in September. So let's move on. Gentlemen.
Yes.
I didn't ask you here for no reason. So we're going to go into our top story of the day, which will be a review of the CSM Summit with more than just Mark and me. And when we're not held hostage at CCP, so we have to be nice to them, we're going to give you the real scoop as to what happened at the summit. All right. We had Jinx on Thursday night from CCP headquarters. Mark and I were on as well. We had Dark Shines to talk about all the fire stuff. We talked a little bit about what had been going on at the summit, but I want to hear from Angry and Kaz, and then I want to talk to Mark some more about what was going on, because I think that this was an interesting summit. I'm the only one that has summit background because I was on CSM 13. CSM 14 was the last physical summit. There's nobody left on the CSM from CSM 14. That was only 3 years ago. Amazingly enough, for everybody who says, oh, the CSM never changes. Well, it's changed a lot in the last 3 years. I went to CSM 13, 2 summits in CSM 13. This was my 3rd summit, the first one for a lot of these guys. And for those who were there present, it was the first one. Kaz did it all virtual. I got to give him credit. The man woke up at 2 a.m. every single day, took a whole week off of work so he could sit in that chair, sipping from that giant-ass mug, and participating at the CSM Summit. Kaz, what did you think about it?
I mean, like
away?
I said, they did their level best to impress us, right? And a group that when we were all elected, we said, hey, the player numbers look in the tank. We're all honestly kind of scared, and we're wondering what's up here, right? So obviously the field has changed a lot. A few months later, they dropped the expansion. The game seems healthier. to everyone observing it. Everyone seems happy. The expansion seems to have been a hit, right? And they clearly wanted to follow on from that and show us as much cool stuff as they could, and have us feeling like things are good, right? So they did their best, right? It was clearly effort put into it. It's not like we were deprioritized or ignored. It didn't feel that way at all. So that's everything there is good, right?
Angry, what was your takeaway?
So I've sort of had like a turnaround now that it's been a week since, is that I was feeling really positive I was there because I guess you don't have time to dig through what was said to you. So I was really positive I was there. However, there were still downer moments at the summit, as there always will be. And but in the week since, we just have time to slow down, do some thinking, look at our notes, and I'm not as positive on it as it was at the summit, but I'm still overall positive about what was accomplished. It's very stereotypical, but I say that even the process of the right questions being asked by CCP is indication of progress, and that definitely did happen. So I'll say I'll take that as a good sign. Hope that it'll move the game in a better direction.
Mark, this was your first CSM.
It was.
You had a long week, a fun week. We're back. The post-coital glow is gone.
Yeah, we're in the refractory period now.
Tell me, what do you think?
Well, look, it's and I've just put these on, but I gotta take them off. Be serious for a second.
He's looking in your eyes.
I know it's kind of like this. I do feel like, I'm gonna say it was a productive week. First off, right? I think we got a lot done. We had a lot of good conversations. We as a group, as a CSM, were able to work well together. I feel like we built some good bonds between all of us. Even Kaz, as distant as he was, it was like his spirit was lingering. I
definitely like zoned out and missed a couple jokes, and thereby made those jokes, which were about me, funnier.
Much funnier.
That is true.
It worked well. Yeah.
That is true. It really, so. And more than just that, we had a lot of great talks, great opportunities to ask questions that, the format of our meetings, and with there being so many of us in the CSM, it can get difficult to get your questions in, especially if somebody's presenting something to you. The meetings are really only an hour long, so being one-on-one, it's a lot harder to avoid a question or walk around a question if somebody's sitting there like looking directly at you. So I felt like that was good. But there was a lot of stuff that either we didn't bring up and we have more work to do on that front, or just some questions left over from CCP about where we're going from here, what's next. We were talking about it a little bit before the show, but I think the thing that the impression that we tried to impart on CCP really early on was that the work they've done so well is pretty good. At least over the last couple of months, it's a lot to feel good about, but they absolutely cannot rest on their laurels. If there is a worst possible time to slow down and just like coast, it's probably right now, because the moment they start coasting is the moment when people say, okay, well, we're just back to the same CCP. And then, that would be pretty bad. I think pretty bad.
I agree 10,000%. I'm rolling on the screen. There were two posts put out this week. Pando put out one on Reddit. I put out one on the regular forums talking about how the summit went. And from my perspective, there are a couple of things that I want to see on the CSM. The number one thing is I'm a stickler for activity. I want people to do things, to show up and participate. And the biggest way to get on my bad side as a CSM member is to not show up to meetings. And when you're there, not say anything and not participate. And unfortunately, I've served on. Go ahead.
Do we have any of that problem on the CSM?
No, and that's what I was getting to. The CSM 13, there were a couple times where I was like, why is this person here? 15 and 16, exactly the same issue. And unfortunately, we even had one guy leave in 16. ProGod resigned, which was great. And I give him all the credit in the world for that, because he could have just sat there and done nothing and wasted that seat, but he didn't. And he gave Arcia the chance to get on. And I think she had a positive impact on the faction warfare changes that happened at the end of last year, or at least as they started that process. she was there to help, which I thought was pretty critical.
I mean, her input was critical throughout the parts of the process I saw. I don't want to blow her up too much, right? But she's been just extraordinary.
No, and I think, one of the things somebody had asked about, was there any conversations about lore or anything? And if you had asked me, I remember when people were running in the past about asking about, I'm like, guys, we don't talk about lore on the CSM. That's not a thing. So I don't know why you'd be wasting your time running for this. We had one big role player guy that got a lot of votes, but didn't make it. But damn, Arcia, she managed just by physically being there to bring lore into a dozen different conversations. And Delegate Zero, who's the main lore guy, was in a bunch of meetings then. And I thought it was great. I couldn't believe it. It was nice. And it was weird because I got to say, I'm not a huge lore guy in this game. I'm on the player side. We create our own stories. I'm not worried about what the CCP writers are doing. But I have to give a shout out to my boy Kazanir, who was sprinkling a lot of random little lore things in there. And it wasn't just 40K references, which I'm starting to get more because the guys are making me read those books. So I was impressed. So Kaz, I didn't realize you were a lore guy.
I grew up reading all of the original Chronicles, right? I have this period before I really started playing of sort of being vaguely familiar with Eve, right? Yeah, I was dropping out of college. There's more sci-fi content. I read all of it, right? So hey, why not? Do I engage with the RP in this game? No, I don't. I still don't have a faction war character. It's sort of embarrassing, right? But we'll get there.
Right, exactly. We're getting there.
But yeah, I know what's going on in New Eden. I think that's important.
It's good.
And hearing hearing the lore discussed from somebody who actually knows something about the lore, I am convinced that Arcia Elkin has forgotten more about the lore of EVE Online than I know just about the game.
Than all of us know put together. Just saying.
Correct. It is an insane amount of just detailed things that she's like an encyclopedia, and that is impressive. Even comparing to, like I said last week, Delegate Zero, Eve's resident lore wizard. That man is an incredible. It was really, really cool. And that was one of the things I felt like I'm most positive about, I think, last week, among the things we've already talked about. But just knowing that, as important as the game mechanics and ship balance and everything else is, that there are still people who are in there doing the work of like trying to maintain a cohesive, interesting narrative that rides underneath the player narrative was pretty cool.
Yeah, and honestly, that's not easy to do, right? I, as also a nerd, read all of the old Star Wars, now called legacy books, right? The schlock genre fiction that was common to nerds of that era that is now non-canon, right? That is a difficult sort of enterprise to maintain. So for them to have anything to put this game into as a milieu is honestly impressive, right? So if you don't care about the lore, great, blow people up, and then thus you will be part of it someday, right? We'll write a book about you later. But it's cool that they have this.
So when it comes down to it, comparing this CSM to past CSMs, I think this is one of the best CSMs I've ever been on, if not the best one. And I say that knowing in all knowledge that my two real life best friends, Inaminate and Merkelchen, are not on this CSM, and I wish they were here because I miss them very much. It's not partying. I liked partying with you guys, but it's not the same without those two. But I will say, in terms of coherence, cohesiveness, the ability for us to work together even when we disagree, this CSM has been one of the best I've ever seen, and I think the CCP folks would agree with me on that. When it comes down to it, each CSM, and people will say a lot about, the CSM doesn't matter, they don't listen to you, and I would say it depends. Like, there are times when they do listen to us, there are times when they don't. When they don't listen to us, it tends to be when we are fractured, when we are fighting with each other, when we are being jerks to them, when we are being jerks to each other. That's when it's easy for them to tune us out. Oh, we can't listen to these guys. They have their own political issues going on. You can't trust what they're saying. But there's none of that this time around, which I think is very helpful. And then the other thing that I would say, from my perspective, is we came at the exact right time in their development cycle. They are in the process of starting work on the new expansion that's supposed to be out at the end of the second quarter, according to their current roadmap that they showed us in January. And that was a public roadmap, not a private one. And they're in the process. They finished pre-production. They're in the process of working. They were doing their exploration phase. They're starting all this stuff. This was exactly the time for us to get in there and tell them, here's what players want. Here's what they think they need. Here's what would be great to see. Here are the ideas that we'd like to have. And we presented a ton of player-sourced ideas. And it includes all of the stuff that you guys want to see. and all of the stuff that sometimes I don't want to see, but people still want to see.
It includes that. Say we're at least having the conversation, right?
Well, that's what I mean. We are we included. We passed on this information. I know one of the big things we talked about, and we can talk about it now, Angry, because you got some slides for it. Is you guys may want, like Brisc. Brisc loves Marauders. Brisc doesn't want any Marauder nerfs. We talked about Marauder nerfs for a couple of hours minimum.
Not just in the meetings either. At the bar.
Despite the fact that I don't like nerfing ships that are very popular, I think there is a concern amongst everyone, even the folks that like them, that these things are a little OP. So do we want to talk about Marauders and some of the conversation that we had?
Let's have an economic interlude, and then we'll come back to the summit.
All right.
Well, I think we should just beat the iron while it's hot. So, all right. You want to put up the slide about Marauder losses?
Yes, let me do that for you right now.
Yeah, bring that one up.
To everyone asking why do you guys think Marauders are overpowered? Well, this graph, you can't see the axis, so
I hate looking at it so much.
There it is.
So this graph is why people think Marauders are overpowered. So I'm choosing the area. So this is whole losses in wormholes in roughly 2 categories. The red line is dreadnoughts. The yellow line is Marauders, and you sort of see while the price nerf did have the capital industry change did have something to do with it. Wormholes are one of the areas of space where you can most absorb the higher price of dreadnoughts because it's less impactful.
Because they're rich motherfuckers. Go ahead and say it, Angry, because they all have a ton of money.
They all have a ton of money. However, what you see is that the Marauder is so good, it has squeezed every other hole outside of the wormhole PvE meta. So if you go into wormholes of C5 and above, it's all Marauders all the time. And it's causing Mark blue balls because people want their cap kills, and you can't get them now because whenever you go to a site, it's just 15 Marauders, and you come in, they MJD out, and you get blue balled.
Hang on, what the fuck? Hang on 1 second. Commander Starscream in the fucking chat. How are Marauders OP when they have a paper thin tank? What fucking Marauders are you flying? Holy shit! I don't understand. I think I'm.
I held off a fleet of 10 Ishtars the other day in my Vargar and didn't die. So I'm just saying.
I mean, I just don't. I don't understand it. Okay, sorry.
I mean, this is a positive element of the Marauder, is the way in which you can have a bling ship that a bad person will get into and then quickly lose because it takes some skill to operate, right? It's not without its design benefits, right? You
that is true.
Be able to click your buttons and stuff, but they're too good at it at scale and in various ways. They've outcompeted a lot of stuff. So we have talked about that.
So I didn't include Nestor and Lashak on this, but those are trending downwards as well. Not quite as hard as the Dreadnought, but Marauders also displaced those 2 ships. And
I think one of the biggest things people complain about too, just to speak very quickly on this, is not even just that they're good, is that they are they do a lot of things very well, and they have pushed a lot of things out. Yes, they are the meta choice for almost every comp, to the point where it almost doesn't make sense to ask people to train into anything other than Marauders, because if you can afford them, and wormholers can, if you can afford them, everyone's going to fly Marauders. That's just the way it is. I mean, you have fleets that will show up, to evictions, 40 Marauders strong, 50 Marauders strong, and you just got to have more Marauders. So it sucks. I am of the opinion, I am of the mindset that the game is better when there are a diverse and unique set of tactics that people can, certain things are better than other things. It's good to have a lot of balance. And when you have one thing that is just, so far above everything else, I think it really poisons the atmosphere.
It needs some meta change.
Yeah.
Somehow, whatever needs to happen, it has to change up the meta in some fashion.
Yep. We have ideas.
So I know we had a lot of ideas. We had a lot of conversations about this. I know I brought up, I said, if you have to nerf these, do it in a way that's not like, I mean, I don't even call it a nerf. Like do it in a way where you just simply have to make a choice as to what you want. Like take the Bastion module, turn it into something that's scripted potentially, where you either get like a better tank or you get better, tracking, or you get better something, so that you have to pick which one you want, and you and you can do that on the fly. But it takes time to reload the scripts and things like that. So it's not easy to be all things at all times. Yeah, and I know that was not. I don't think that that's going to be the solution. I don't know how well received that would be. I know other people had talked about, in the community, I've seen a number of discussions from put the Bastion module back to the full minute, which I think defeats the purpose of the change that they made in the first place to make them more mobile, but that's a potential option. Changing the E-War bonuses on there, a bunch of different things. But I know that this was a big topic of the balance discussions, and I think, in fact, that if I recall correctly, we spent a lot of time talking about Marauders to the exclusion of almost everything else for at least for a little while.
Yeah, we had a period of time where we effectively just sat down and talked about things like that, and the Marauder conversation almost dominated the entire conversation. And realistically, we could have talked about ship balance at the summit for like 3 days straight if we wanted to. At the detriment of everything else that we were working on. But
let me say, for the record, for those of you in the chat who are saying, don't nerf Marauders, don't nerf Marauders, don't nerf Marauders. What did I say at the summit, Mark? Don't nerf Marauders. I've said this 10,000 times. I said, don't do it. Leave it alone. These are popular ships. People like them. If you're going to do anything, buff the other ones so that they are more they're more useful.
The problem is, so when we talk about, and I don't so at face value, I agree with you. The problem is you would have to buff so many other things to even be close to competitive that you would end up having to rework like something like 40% of the ships in the game to bring them to a level where it's kind of interesting.
But what I'm glad of, at least,
and I'm sorry, I just want to strike. Speaking of striking while the iron's hot, to echo the words of Asher Elias in the chat, buffing everything does lead to a degen meta, because all you've done is make you effectively create a almost a buffer effect where you have a line of things that are strong, very strong, and then everything else that missed the buff is all very bad now. And then you've got that space in between where down here nothing here is usable at all. What you'd better have, or would be better to have, is kind of a gradation in there, which we don't have currently because the Marauder is just too goddamn good. What were you going to say, Kaz? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was going to say, I think at least what makes me happy is that we seem to have gotten them away from this attitude of let's wait until the problem is very bad and then drop on these crashing nerfs right all at once. We're at least talking about the thing early, and they have, it seems like, not proceeded, in spite of all the charts that they can see as well as we can, have not done anything because there's not an easy one solution, and they're not willing to just destroy the meta completely. And I think that's a positive overall change, even if for the time being these things do seem cancerous. There's been a lot of small cancers in EVE over the years.
And I will say, if you look at the chat, I mean, this is a perfect example. When you bring this up, you get folks who are like 100% nerf the shit out of them. You have folks on the other side who are don't touch them at all. What are you fucking doing? And there's no middle ground. It's one or the other. There's nobody that's like, well, we should touch them a little bit. No, it's like you pick which side you're on. And I mean, that tells me, part of that tells me that means they're pretty balanced. But at the same time, I know full well that they're not balanced. So it's not an easy solution, as Kaz just said. Trying to figure out how you do this without destroying them again. I don't know what the easy thing is, but the good news is none of us on the stream here, or none of you guys in the chat, have to figure this out. This is CCP's problem.
True.
They have to decide what they want to do. I
do like the idea of forcing people to choose, and we've talked about that a little bit when we talk about breaking the Bastion module out into a couple different elements, and then forcing people to make a decision. So you don't have the one thing that's good at everything. You can have the thing that's good at one thing if you use this Bastion module, or a thing that's good at another thing if you use this other Bastion module. But whether or not we're going to see anything like that, honestly, who knows?
All right. Now, this was controversial in the community, and I want to talk to Mark about this for a second. Okay. So as you guys saw, there was a wormhole and Pochven power hour that was announced, and that was discussed. And
It's only with something.
a number of people in the community asked, why did they merge wormholes and Pochven together? Doesn't CCP recognize that this is a separate area of space? And I jokingly said on Pando's thread, we did that to fuck with Mark and was downvoted into oblivion. So Mark, let me ask you a question. Is it true that to be a wormholer, you must have your sense of humor surgically removed before you play?
That's true. We actually, it's one of those things you have to do voluntarily before they even give you your ID card. The one that says like wormholer, by the way, on the back. You cannot. You have to be super serious all the time, as I am. People who know me will tell you, very serious.
He's super
constantly.
serial.
I only wear serious clothes. I speak in a serious accent.
Listen to Imperium FM radio.
I only listen to Sirius FM radio. I'm super serial. So yeah, I honestly, Brisc, that was a fucking bad joke. No, I don't think it was funny.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, you suck.
It was pretty good. It was funny. Anyway, the Pochven and wormhole time I thought was okay. We spent some time talking about wormholes. We did spend a lot of time talking about Pochven. And Angry, do you want to tell us why we spent so much time talking about Pochven?
Throw that shit up there.
Do you want to bring up the?
Here's the next slide.
Yeah.
I will zoom in on this one.
Yeah. So this is off the January MER showing exactly what happened in Pochven.
That's rough.
Oops. So what this sort of really established is that Pochven is observatory flashpoints, and without observatory flashpoints, there is no Pochven as it is right now. And once they realize that, so what this is showing is the blue line is generated from Pochven. The red bar is an approximate of PvP activity. And what it shows is the moment that observatory flashpoints stopped being constantly respawning, PvP activity in Pochven died basically overnight. And if you look at the December MER, there's this famous import and export graph where everyone just brought their shit out of Pochven. I believe I sent you that. That's a fight. That doesn't count.
Yeah.
This bar, just for the record, this bar here was a big fight in ScarCon that happened that had nothing to do with anything. Mm-hmm. So don't just ignore this outlier because it has nothing to do with our larger point. Let me pull up the.
Well, it had a little bit to do with it. We thought that there would be fewer people there, right?
Yeah. So this is the Great Pochven evac, where 55 trillion of stuff left. Because
wow,
it's like it's like the Wild West ghost town. There's no gold. There's no reason to stay.
Even I can have a reaction to a number of ISK.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like unlike the DPS change, like in nullsec, there's still the equivalent of railroads, your favorite bar and stuff. But like in Pochven, if there's no observatory flashpoints, there's just jack shit to do.
Yeah.
If you want to move back to the previous one, thank you. So this got CCP to do one of their quickest iterations, because the common meme is CCP and iteration, which is that they don't do it. So the poor state of affairs for Pochven only lasted about a month. And then it was hotfixed back to a shorter respawn, which you see immediately spike the ISK graph back up. Another thing you realize from a very steady ISK line like this is that this site, after the nerf, were being farmed at capacity, which means the moment a site spawns, someone is on it really quick, they run it real quick, and they're waiting on the respawn for the next one. So we don't quite know what... so mechanically speaking, the new level is not quite at saturation, but it's pretty...
It's close. It's
close.
Yeah. And what I think
this is also a sort of a knee-jerk change. So a lot of people know this is not actually the long-term change for Pochven going forward, but it's the only one CCP could do on a short, which is a 1 month time frame.
So to back up to let everybody know, so what happened was they fixed the glitch on the flashpoint observatories. The observatory flashpoints, they were originally spawning instantly. They changed it to a 90-minute respawn timer, which is what you saw here when we saw that giant hockey stick dropping. They moved it up a couple weeks ago. I want to say 2 weeks ago to 30 minutes instead of 90. They reduced it, but we were advocating pretty hard during the summit to put it back down to 0, and that if there is a concern about the amount of wealth being generated in Pochven, and frankly, I don't think there really was. It's not out of control. It's not like blue loot and wormholes.
Well, and this is interesting. We looked at the reports, and the number sort of
Northeast payouts. Yeah. Go ahead, Kaz.
Yeah, I was going to say, we did look at the MER and the aftermath, and their numbers are really good. They have a better multiplier on the ISK to destruction ratio, which is a crappy, mostly meaningless number that nevertheless everyone uses to compare stuff, thanks to Olmeca. So we'll roll with it. And in fact, they had more like 4 or 5 times the multiplier of a post DBS like nullsec change. Right, so they're making really good money, but the impact of this change on the graph turns out to be that ratio stayed the same, right? You also see the red drop off, right? And so their attempt at a fix, if it was a fix, did not have the impact that you want, which is if you want to say the region is too productive in money terms, it's in some sense relative. And so what I have tried to advise them, and I won't speak for anyone else, but have said, right, the zero timer created this unique ecosystem. And we saw these quotes from FCs who was like, it was great. There was always a site, right? You undock. If someone is running the sites, you go shoot them. And you get a fight or they dock up. And now you're the one running the sites. Right. And so that unique gameplay loop, I've told them, try and get that back and just nerf the payouts themselves. Right. Correct. So there's many options. Right. But clearly they're not back to what they were. The thing really was unique in an interesting way before, because it was bringing all these people to the font. Right.
Yeah. And just for the record. OK, because, again, as I noted earlier, to be a wormholer means that you've had your sense of humor surgically removed. When I make blue loot jokes, those are jokes. I am not suggesting that anybody nerf wormholes. I have not said that, and I have been steadfast as the lone wormhole representative for years until Mark got here to leave it alone. Don't touch it. Don't mess with anything. Now that he's here, I specifically brought him on the show so I could make fun of blue loot at every opportunity, and I intend
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. It is nice to know that you can enjoy a region of space where your primary currency is the linchpin that holds the entire economy together. That does feel very good.
I mean, come on, right?
That is true. I mean, unironically, that is true. That being said, there was, I think Pando maybe made a comment on his thread that some people were concerned about, which was that during the Wormhole and Pochven Power Hour, there was a lot of talk about Pochven and not a ton of talk about wormholes. For the record, I just want to clear the air. That graph that we saw previously was the reason why that conversation was mostly about Pochven, because they, as many things as I would like to get addressed in wormhole space, I cannot pretend like that the situation was as dire as as Pochven has turned out to be over the last 2 months. So certainly that was a priority. Plus, I got like 2 hours to talk to like Hilmar the next day during my presentation.
Right.
So,
Mark did an entire presentation. And I have to say, the other thing, the wormholers were also extremely unhappy, Mark, about the fact that you even had to do a presentation on wormholes. What are they? Yeah,
that was kind of funny too. So, okay. So to explain that just a little bit, I was approached by CCP Swift, our good friend Elise Randolph, about doing that presentation like the Friday before we left. And because I had not asked to do one, because there were some things that I like wanted to talk about, but at the same time I was like, and I didn't want to step on anybody's toes if they wanted to do presentations of their own. But yeah, he asked me to do one, and so I'm gonna put a little something together. I've got it linked somewhere. But the reasoning he gave me for why they wanted to do this was not because CCP is full of a bunch of dumbasses who don't know how to, their ass from an elbow or something, but more because the last time they had a big, they talk a lot internally about, the the parts of the game where people are playing. Clearly, but wormhole space is just kind of, it is and always will be, and we probably prefer it that way, the redheaded stepchild of regions in the game. It's it doesn't get as much press as some others, which is fine with us. We're cool with that. We prefer people don't talk about us for the most part, but at the same time, it's good to catch CCP up every now and then. So I put together just a little something, just a little guy, just a little 2-hour presentation about wormholes and wormhole mechanics and our very weird, like, cult adjacent culture stuff, which is very kind of cool, and had a lot of good feedback. So wormholers, don't feel like you weren't represented this week. I stood there, sword in hand, defending your
bathrobe proud.
I walked around the city of Reykjavik in the middle of the night in a bathrobe for you, wormholers. Do you know anyone else who would go out and eat not 1 but 2 hot dogs in a bathrobe in the middle of the night for you?
In a snowstorm.
It wasn't a snowstorm. It was, in fact, it was very strange that there were so many people out, because it was in the middle of a snowstorm. It was in the middle of the night, but it was a good goddamn hot dog, so I can't feel too bad about that. I was nearly naked. That is true. There's a picture of me with Hilmar. I don't know if you have that one, Brisc, where actually I'm just going to send it to you real quick.
Send it to me now and I'll throw it up.
People need to know about the lengths that we went to guarantee the future and well-being of EVE Online. We don't.
I will laugh though, because you asked who else would do this, and Commander Starscream says Big Red Boat, and he's right. That is 100% true. Boat would have done that. Yes.
I will not. I don't deny that. And
that is 100% true.
I've never had the opportunity myself to speak to Mr. Boat, Mr. Big Red.
Marcia as well. She showed up in cat ears.
She did.
She had a cape and cat ears for most of the summit. It was pretty impressive.
I have sent you a picture. You can see that's me and Mr. Hilmar is what we had going on. So yes, it sounds,
there it is right there.
We've had a lot of fun. Oh yeah, it's a good picture. We've had a lot of fun. We worked hard, but at the same time, we stuck our necks out for the player base. Specifically me in this picture. I mean, you don't know what I'm wearing underneath there. You can't see it, and you can assume.
Your constituents will always be dissatisfied, Mark. You're the head of a disparate coalition of people who can barely stand each other on the best day, right?
You're goddamn right I am.
You need the power of the state to make people vote.
No, absolutely fucking not. Listen, the reason why wormholers are the best goddamn players in this game is because nobody hates a wormholer as much as themselves. And
that is a good foundation.
Yes,
that's true.
We're very realistic in that way, I think. So anyway, yeah, we had a good time. It was good. Like to do it again. Mark Resurrectus for CSM 18. Make wormholes bathrobe again. Here we go.
There you go. And just for those who are trying to figure out how big Mark and I are, this is us together.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. He's only about 2 inches taller than me. Not too bad.
Not too bad.
Not too bad. There you go. Us at the summit. Anyway, so
have you seen the? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Have you seen the picture of me next to Azamakis?
No, you got to send me that one, because that's probably really, really funny.
It is. It's, oh my gosh, it's so precious. Azamakis is lovely. This is CCP Psych. He's one of the coolest people you'll ever have the chance to work with. He's a very cool Greek man. Love him dearly. He puts up with so much from us, especially from Kenneth Feld. But he is not especially tall. He's not especially tall.
Here is Mark and Azamakis. So
I love him so much.
CCP Psych.
He's a good dude.
There he is.
We're lucky to have him.
Mark's a big boy. There you go.
Anyway, carry on.
Wrapping up, Angry, did you want to talk about your presentations?
Sure, I gave 2. One of them was with Kenneth Feld, and that one is very NDA, so I can't talk about it. The other one is about a pet peeve of mine, which is that that CCP. This is sparking a conversation I had with CCP Dragon, which is that the importance of good and not necessarily high income PvE in driving PvP. And so this is a slightly cleaned up version of the slide I showed at no, it was not why Kenneth L says everything's wrong, but it was sort of showing that CCP sort of caught lightning in a bottle in a couple places and made regions of space where PvE is inducive to PvP, which is not the case in the vast majority of EVE right now, but should be, because so this is giving a presentation on how parts of PvE design drive PvP behavior and PvE behavior. So if you go to the next one, it's a very so if you go to the next slide, so this is sort of this is a very popular concept recently, the survivability onion, which is that these are all the things you have to do and fail in order to die, and the design of the PvE site itself, like whether it's in a dead space, whether it's local, what kind of threats are there, whether you have to move, all determine how important these steps are relatively in the survivability onion. So yeah, so and
I like that survivability onion. I'm going to use that at some point again. That's pretty solid.
But basically, is that the consensus from players, I believe, is that the closer the inner levels of the onion are more fun than the outer levels of the onion. Like if we're avoiding detection, it's, oh, nobody came in my system, that's not fun, or things like that. So for example, this is the example I gave of a good PvE engagement, which was Pochven Observer Flashpoint, and why I lobbied for CP to restore the 0 cooldown in exchange for dying is the most fun. It actually is. Dying is fun. And
God knows I do it enough.
And the reason why observatory flashpoints are fun and conducive to PvE is that the key survival mechanic of observatory flashpoints is towards the inner parts of the onion. Is that if you at least for one meta of running, which is heavy armor, Ishtars are different, but Ishtars suck. We're working on getting Ishtars removed out of those, out of Observer Flashpoint meta. So is the reason, and the reason is because if you're running heavy armor Observer Flashpoint, it's 10 battleships, and with 10 battleships properly fit, since the DPS requirement isn't very high, you can fight a lot of things that come in and try to kill you, and that is one of the reasons why Pochven sees very high destruction monthly. And if you go to the next slide. And another example is of again, people might say that faction warfare is PvP, not PvE, but at the very lowest level, where you go into the Plex, you kill the rat guarding it, and then you start circling the button, that is, until someone comes in, that is PvE. And because of the way that the FW complex is designed, it is explicitly designed for someone to come in and fight you, and you fight them, and if you don't fight them, you forfeit your progress and you forfeit your reward. And that's an example of good design driving PvP. And if you go to the next one, and here's an example of bad design, solo ratting in a null subcap, and which is that the main survivability point is you dock when hostiles enter local. So that's not interactive for the people who come to kill you. That's not interactive for you because of the way that the site is designed in nullsec. DPS is king, and everyone fits paper tank max DPS ships. So if you get tackled, you automatically die. So the common complaint, oh, why don't the Ratters fight us? Well, the Ratters can't fight you because their fits are not the
max DPS fits. They don't have tackle. They don't have any kind of
they
tanker
can't fight you.
most of
So
the
their
time.
only escape is to run. And if they PvP fit, they either can't tank the site or they make no money. Like people who try like ratting with PvP fit ships knows it pays ass. And
it's
then
very bad.
Yeah, and then the bottom one is number 7 is a summary of like how to design PvE in the future that is better. And the consensus and the thought I have is, number 1, you should limit the number of sites to concentrate players, so you get more player collisions, because PvP only happens when you have a player collision. you should actually limit who can come in to the site, both to so that the person running the site has an idea of maximum threat, of like you, so they can sort of so this is one of the another thing in null, which is that both the threat and the response is maximum because it's open space. You can even if you PvP tank your Marauder, 30 bombers come in, you're dead automatically. You wasted all your money. If conversely, like the response is 50 supers, there's no fighting that. So putting a gate behind the site actually makes it more conducive to fighting. And then number 3 is up the ante on invasion. If you run away, you should lose more than just your ISK for the rest of the site. You should, if the reward is backloaded, that'll force you to stand your ground. You give up a lot more than just some ISK. Or alternatively, you make it so that if you run away, you can't run away by adding scram rats. So scram rats, you have to stand and fight. Mm-hmm. And within the fighting condition is that CCP can design sites where you don't need high DPS, because if you see on the left hand side, there's something about site demands on ship fit. All of these can be demands on the ship fitting, and the higher the, so to speak, the more that you need tank mobility and utility, the more PvP viable the ship is, and the less prioritized that DPS is, the less likely you'll see these super glass cannon fits that can't fight.
And this is the problem that I have said over and over again with the way that CCP designs PvE in this game. Why are you designing your player versus environment stuff to be so completely divorced from what everybody does in player versus player that you're essentially excluding most of them in that? It doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. Why would you not, at least in the modern era of site design, why would you not design things that are meant to be run in PvP capable ships so that you can turn them into a PvE VP scenario, which is what we all want in this game? I don't understand it.
Yeah, so one of the things about Pochven Fuel is that Observatory Flashpoint is not a hard site. And because it's not a hard site, they can actually fit their ship to fight, because the profit loss from being forced off the site is more than the profit loss from slightly lower DPS, as long as you're not an Ishtars.
And the DPS doesn't have to be the key part of the site, right? That's the issue, is that every single nullsec site is basically the same. There's a certain amount of tank you have to work through, and it's about holding your tank and being able to deliver the right amount of DPS, and you just have to get away from that, right? They have all of these different types of anomalies that haven't been touched in 13 years, and it should be that one type of them is bring the fast ship, and you'll make the same amount of money as if you bring a well-tanked ship, or you bring a ship that is mobile, or you bring a ship that has the right utility, and you could do this across all of the different types of content. They just haven't re-examined all that stuff. So Angry's totally correct about this being a very valuable design space.
And to the point of the guys in the chat, I agree with you 100%. I mean, the biggest issue that I have with PvE in this game, and I think Bargo said it's flat out, was that we thought they were going to use the trig stuff to kind of redesign how null anomalies and things work. And I still hope they're going to do that. But the reality is PvE in this game is boring. So if you want to get people to do it, it can either be fun, at least in the mind, at least the way it seems to be in CCP's mind, it can either be fun or it can be lucrative. It can't be both. Yeah. And people are willing to run the sites that they're boring as long as they're making money doing it. So PvE just turns into a maximizing your ISK per hour.
Yeah, we do.
Which sucks. I mean, that's wormhole space right there, right, Mark? I mean, that's all you. I mean, is killing sleepers fun? I don't think it is.
No, man, blue sites fucking suck. Everybody hates them, but it's cash money, so.
Right, I mean, so that's why you do it. So if they could focus on trying to put a little bit more of the fun into the PvE, like I think the way that they designed the Abyssal Dead Space stuff, that's pretty fun. But again, that's another situation where those ships are designed specifically for what they're doing, and they don't have a ton of utility outside of that area. And if you keep creating a meta where you have to fit your ship specifically to run this one site, but there's no utility outside of that, and you just turn into a walking target, I don't know. That to me does not seem as much fun.
Right. I mean, you can get even deeper, right? It should be like there's a site where you can bring ships that can kill several stealth bombers. and other sites you have to bring a ship that can't do that, but is still a PvP ship, right? There's all these angles. EVE is a rich game, and they haven't engaged that vector with its richness in the way they need to.
And Arendis is correct. This does not address miners or hunters, and that's 100% true. And I think that's another thing that they have to pay attention to. But in any event, gentlemen, we are way over time.
We are.
I'm surprised, not in any way, that you get 3 of the talkers, and Angry, because Angry's not a huge talker. But when we let him go with a spreadsheet, he goes crazy.
We don't let him talk enough. That's the problem.
That is true.
He's got to have. As soon as you put a laptop with a PowerPoint in front of him, the man becomes loquacious. The rest of us just can't stop at all. But
I talked a lot during the Excel meeting.
That is true.
That is true.
You did talk a lot during the Excel.
Cool meeting too, by the way.
That was a good meeting, by the way. Another good meeting.
We've memed on it a lot, but oh my gosh, it was a lot of fun.
If you guys have not signed up for the Excel beta, I would strongly suggest that you do that. It's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Meta Show for February the 11th, 2023. I'm Brisc Rubal, joined alongside Mark Resurrectus, Wormholer, by the way. Kazanir and Angry from the CSM have joined us today. We talked a lot of different stuff. Remember, Plex4Good running until February 21st. Please donate your Plex to help our friends in Syria and Turkey who are recovering from the earthquake. All of our guys in EVE London, you guys have a great time, and hopefully we will see you at some kind of a big EVE meet. Mark and I will be back next week. As always, Marky Mark, wrap us out.
Take it easy, everybody. Donate to Plex4Good. Wash your hands. Ask CCP for more Zern skins. Good night.
And you stay classy, New Eden.
Also, my slideshow is on REVE.
Got you at the end.
Love that.